17
Here
other
we
people,
go.
most of them children as well, including 2 now in critical condition. Kira.
And just looking at the pictures here of parents hugging their kids, knowing that their children are okay after witnessing this. And Aaron, both my kids went to a Catholic school. They had Mass on Wednesday mornings. I'm getting flooded now with text messages from families, even our family priest that has been at those, has participated in those masses on Wednesdays, and apparently this is reverberating across the country. The church is talking about it. Families are talking about it. They're praying about it right now. I want to take it to our White House, Chief White House Correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary Bruce, I know you've been hearing from the President, as well as the White House is also monitoring this and sending out prayers and love as well.
Well, Kira, I can tell you we just learned that President Trump has spoken with Governor Tim Walz on the phone. The president offering his condolences. Governor Walz thanking him for his support that he has offered so far. We haven't heard from the president in person yet. He's spending the day behind closed doors here at the White House, but he did take to social media, the president saying he has been briefed on the tragic shooting in Minneapolis, adding that the FBI quickly responded, that they are on the scene, saying the White House will continue to monitor this terrible situation, adding, please join me in praying for everyone involved. The president here is expected to shortly be sitting down to lunch with the vice president. J.D. Vance also posting briefly online, we're at the White House monitoring the situation in Minneapolis. Join all of us in praying for the victims. But as you heard from the mayor there in his heartfelt remarks saying, you know, praying isn't enough at this point. These children were quite literally praying when they were gunned down. An 8 and a 10-year-old, 8 and 10, shot while praying with their classmates in a church at school. As you mentioned, 14 other children injured, 17 in total. We are also hearing from members of Congress, members from Minnesota, offering what has become sort of the routine statements, offering their shock, sadness, and support. And from those Democratic members of Congress, calls again for more gun reforms. Of course, we have said this far too often. There simply is not the political will in this town, and there hasn't been for some time now, to take meaningful action on gun reforms. President Trump casts himself as a tough-on-crime president right now in Washington, D.C. Members of the National Guard are here on the street. The administration has taken significant steps to take control of the Metropolitan Police Department here, but he has not so far thrown really the weight and the heft of his administration behind doing something to meaningfully address this epidemic in this country. And I think, as we've been saying, it is the horrific reality in this country that every single parent has to worry about school shootings, especially this time of year when every parent holds their child's hand and walks them to school for the first day. They wonder, will they be safe? Is my child coming home? That, unfortunately, was not true for these children here today. And now, once again, the spotlight will be on this White House, on Washington, and on this administration, wondering what, if anything, Washington is going to do about it. It is a question we ask, it seems, every couple weeks in this country, and yet we continue to see these horrific, awful events. This one, once again, impacting small school children simply trying to enjoy the first week of class. Kira?
Mary, you're a parent. I'm a parent. Walked my daughter to the bus stop last week, took my son to school this week. He goes to a Catholic school. Again, my phone blowing up from Catholics across this country, in particular Catholic schools, worried now about morning Mass, Wednesday Mass that happens as a part of these schools. I want to bring in our contributor, also former FBI agent Brad Garrett. Brad, a male gunman, according to police, early 20s, and apparently no history of violence, yet showing up with 3 different types of weapons, parking his car in the parking lot, and just firing off, as the police chief said, like a coward, into the windows, the stained glass windows, as those kids were in the pews praying during Mass on this first week of school.
So I think what you have is somebody who planned this, Kara. I think likely he picked this particular day knowing it's the beginning of school. Now he may know that because he attended that school at some point. We'll have to see. Takes 3 weapons. It'll be interesting to see what's the history of those 3 weapons, if it follows most mass shooters. And by the way, most mass shooters don't tend to have much of a prior record as to did he get these weapons lawfully. And it have to go to the driving force behind him to do this. You know, what drives mass shooters? It's nothing new. It's rage and feeling powerless and feeling like you are the victim, you, the shooter, are the victim, and you're going to take your revenge out on others. I find it interesting that he fired outside the church, and still, we're not sure about inside, but it sounds like a vast majority, if not all of this shooting occurred outside the church. Did he not want to really face the people that he's harming? Maybe. The whole idea of potentially a smoke grenade that the police chief mentioned, you know, that also would suggest that he doesn't really want to look at what he's doing, or, you know, use smoke to also disorient people. So that's another component of this. But, you know, the question is, we ask this every week, it seems like now, how do you stop something like this? And the answer is, you don't unless you know about it. And that really goes to how much energy can we really put into identifying people that are troubled. That doesn't mean they're going to be a mass shooter, but people that they're going down and things that they say and weapons that they acquire. And I understand that people don't want that infringed upon. But you know, if you want to stop at least some of these mass shootings, you're going to have to know more about troubled folks in your community. Law enforcement is not really geared up to do that from a time and energy standpoint and training standpoint. They do their best, of course, but it's a real key component, because clearly, you know, we just don't have the will as a country to do anything about the gun laws. And with 20 million plus AR-15s and 400 million plus weapons in general across the country, it just makes it, sadly, too easy for people like this troubled 20-year-old to commit these mass shootings.
And it's something our Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas has been covering for years. Pierre, you've done documentaries, you've done specials, you've done investigations, and once again, here we are talking about access to guns. We still don't know how this gunman got access to these 3 different types of weapons, but we sure know, state by state, the laws are different. How these gunmen get these guns, they get them in various ways. They make them, they learn how to make them off the internet. So much to learn about this gunman.
Kira, what we see here is the country has this ongoing and continuous question. Now, in general, violence, gun violence, and crime has been trending downward. But that's cold comfort to the people who are experiencing incidents like this. And what we do know is that no matter what the trend tends to be, this country has a violence and gun violence chronic issue that happens over and over. Whatever the data is, there are hundreds and thousands of people who are shot in this country. And the fact that they increasingly and routinely occur at churches, schools, movie theaters, malls, any place that is considered a soft target, that is where these troubled people go, because they want to kill as many people as possible. And the question becomes, over and over again, exactly what is the nation and what are people prepared to do about it?
And let's not forget about the mental health crisis that this country faces as well. Pierre, thank you. Thank you to everyone that helped us contribute to our breaking news coverage today. Chief White House Correspondent Mary Bruce, also our Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katursky, along with former FBI agent Brad Garrett, all of you working to bring us the latest information of what we can tell you now. A very sad day as many kids are returning to school for the first time this week. We will continue to follow this shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, where we now can report an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old died in the pews while praying during Mass. The gunman, believed to be in his early 20s, a male, taking his own life after shooting up that church on this first day of Mass and the first week of school. Our coverage does continue. We are going to return you now to your regular programming. ABC News Live, also abcnews.com. We'll have all the latest details. We'll have a full report on World News Tonight. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Diana Macedo. We have breaking news now. Police now confirm 2 children ages 8 and 10 have been killed in a deadly mass shooting at a Catholic church in Minneapolis. Officials say 17 others are injured after a gunman opened fire during a mass at Annunciation Church.
Why did he
celebrating
do
the first
this
week of
is my
school at the
question.
school associated with
Why
that
did
church
he
just
do
nearby.
this?
The police chief says just before 8:30 in the morning, the shooter in his early 20s fired from outside the church through the stained glass windows at the pews full of children. And officials say the shooter is also believed to be dead from a self-inflicted gunshot and that there's no active threat to the community at this time. ABC's investigative reporter Libby Rubin's here for more on that. Olivia, earlier we heard a witness say that he heard a string of gunfire, then a pause, then more gunfire. Now police are saying he fired dozens of rounds from 3 different guns.
The police chief there, Brian O'Hara, painting a very vivid picture of what happened outside of this church this morning, saying that this suspect, who they have not identified, clad in black clothing, wearing cargo pants, armed with 3 guns, parked in the parking lot and then went alongside the side of this church where, as you said, Diane, he opened fire into the building at the children. Horrific, who were sitting in the pews celebrating during a ceremony that was meant to mark the first week of school. They also have said there's no indication that this individual had any history of violence or criminal history, nothing extensive that they had there.
And
They
this is
also said that
ABC
they are
News, by
searching
the way.
vehicle that the suspect drove there. They also say that there are more searches to come. That's very likely going to be this individual's house, his home, where they will head to. They have said that this is, they have not indicated if this was someone who had any sort of connection to the church, to the school, to these children. They declined to answer and said they don't know when asked if he is a former student or a former employee and former teacher there. That's not something they have a handle on yet. They are saying that this suspect, they believe, is a male, believed to be in their 20s, and that they did die from what's believed to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound behind the church on this premises. They also said that it may be that the individual made it inside of the church at one point or another, but that they're not quite clear on that, that they're not clear that there were any actual shots fired inside of the church because they didn't find any of the casings. But Diane saying they did find dozens of rounds that were fired as this investigation plays out, Diane.
And Brad, what do you make of the, Robert, what's your reaction to the description of the shooter so far? A male, early 20s, no known criminal history.
Yes, and Chief O'Hara gave us a lot of information very early into this investigation. So it's typically cap to him to be able to get through that information, which is not easy to talk about when you have 17 injured, 14 children. 2 is still critical. So when you look at that, it looks like the shooting happened from outside the entire event, and there's no shell casings inside. So it's right now they're thinking that this all happened from outside, shooting into stained glass windows, children sitting in church pews in worship. The worst possible scenario you can get. And I think back to the 3 Alive shooting in Pittsburgh. It's just something similar to this. So it's just an egregious act of evil. And it's just, this is what you're looking at right now. They also had a smoke canister. And we have to take a look at what happened before, where we obtained all these guns. They know who he is. They probably have his house on lockdown, his residence on lockdown right now, talking to family members to deep into this investigation as to motive of why he would do this. And that's the big issue right now. Why? And it seems to fit a pattern. In cargos, so cargo pants, you can put extra magazines in. All this lines up to a very troubling part of our country right now is these young people being motivated to do these horrible, evil acts. Where was he on social media? What platforms was he in? That's all going to go forward right now to see exactly what triggered this insane violence.
And I want to bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, too. Pierre, how unusual is it that police are saying this guy had 3 different guns and fired all 3 types? And they also mentioned a door being barricaded. Any more on that?
Well, in terms of the weaponry used, one thing that is remarkably consistent in these scenarios is often the use of a long gun or an assault-style rifle. We don't have the specific on the type of rifle, but we often find that the shooters will have additional weapons. In this case, it was a shotgun, and a handgun, and police were emphatic in saying that he used all three. Also noting that they found dozens of rounds outside of the church building. There's a possibility that he may have gone inside as well. Again, this is part of an ongoing, what I use the term chronic example of mass shootings in this country. They occur in all different kinds of scenarios. There are domestic mass shootings where a family member kills the entire family, but there increasingly and routinely are these mass shootings that occur in public places. And as my colleague, the former police high-ranking official just said, we have had shootings in churches, synagogues, movie theaters, anywhere there are large gatherings of people. These shooters know where to go, where people are most vulnerable. In this case, they chose the most. And, you know, you have federal law enforcement offering their support, but the question now becomes how to best identify someone who the police chief said did not have an excessive criminal history of any sort. Apparently not much history in the way of violence, but we often find after the fact that there are issues with behaviors or other different things that were noticed and chronicled at different places that somehow did not prevent the shooter from getting access to weapons and killing people.
And I want to bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, too, because, Aaron, police now say that they are looking at a few things the shooter left behind, including what they believe to be his car at the scene. What's the latest on that?
It's believed the shooter used that vehicle to drive to the church, then sprayed bullets seemingly at random from the outside from 3 different weapons. Police are going through that vehicle now. There are other items that the police said the shooter left behind that may include some online presence, and so the authorities are no doubt scouring social media, looking for any video, looking for any writings at the shooter's home. They have his identity by now, so they'll work to try and understand what led to this. But the shooting begins a new school year, very much the way last year's school year ended, Diane, violently, with the sound of gunfire and those frightening images of people running for cover or hugging loved ones if they've managed to survive. The school year last year in this country ended with a mass shooting at Florida State University, 2 people killed there, and this year now begins with gun violence, deadly gun violence in Minneapolis, leaving an 8 and 10-year-old killed while they were praying, and 17 others injured, including 2 kids who were in critical condition. So the nation that is awash in guns is seeing on the regular violence on school grounds. Everytown for Gun Safety, the advocacy group that sprung up after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Connecticut, says there have been 90 incidents of gun violence on school grounds in 2025, resulting in 29 deaths. So that's on average twice a week happening this year. Something that the country is trying to account for.
That's something we've dealt with far too much. Conversation you and I and so many of us have had far too many times on the air, and I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, because, Mary, you say the president has now had a conversation with the governor on this?
Yeah, the president reaching out, calling Governor Tim Walz to express his condolences. We're told the governor thanked him for the support that he has offered so far. We haven't heard yet directly from the president in person on this. The president's schedule had him spending the day behind closed doors. He's supposed to be having lunch shortly with the vice president, but President Trump did take to social media, as we've been saying, to offer his prayers for everyone involved, to note that he is being continually briefed and updated on the situation, and noting, of course, that the FBI quickly responded and that they are now on the scene. J.D. Vance, the vice president, offering similar prayers and a note that the White House is monitoring all of this. We are also, of course, hearing from members of Congress who are from Minnesota offering what has unfortunately become very sort of familiar statements of shock, sadness, and support, and from Democratic members, renewed calls for gun reforms. But as we've been saying, on air all afternoon now, and this morning, there so far has been sort of little interest in Washington to do anything meaningful, to do anything to address this epidemic of gun violence and school shootings. There have been, occasional laws that have been passed, but clearly not enough to stop these kinds of horrific events. President Trump casts himself as a tough-on-crime president. We certainly have seen that, especially as he has been trying to tackle head-on crime in large American cities like here in Washington, D.C. But taking on the epidemic of shootings and school shootings hasn't received sort of the same kind of public attention and priority from this administration. The question now is whether this is going to change now that you have an 8 and a 10-year-old who have been shot while praying on the first week of school, 14 children injured, 17 in total. And, you know, this continues to happen over and over again. I mean, it's every few weeks there's another shooting. This one, obviously, you know, it hits differently when children are involved. But all of these are horrific, life-changing events. And every single time we have this conversation, and every time the question is, what is Washington going to do about it? That question will then be posed anew to President Trump and this administration today.
And Mary, thank you. You know, earlier we heard from the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who made an emotional plea for action on that point, saying, quote, "Don't say this is about thoughts and prayers." I want to play some of that moment.
There are families that have a deceased child. You cannot put into words the gravity, the tragedy, or the absolute pain of this situation. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church.
The shooting is sure to revive a larger conversation about guns in this country. I want to bring in our Justice reporter, Jack Dante, though, because, Jack, you say the guns used here are likely to play a key role in the investigation.
Well, absolutely. They're going to want to look at the provenance of these guns. Where did this person acquire these weapons? From the police briefing that we just watched, it appears that this person had no extensive criminal history. So it's likely this person wouldn't have been prohibited from purchasing and possessing a firearm. So that's the first thing to look at. ATF will likely do an urgent trace on the weapons to try to learn where they came from, or if anybody provided them to this person, or if this person borrowed them, stole them, however they accessed the firearm. We've seen situations in the past where people acquire weapons from family members, or they take it from their parents' safe, or things of that nature. So did this person acquire these guns on their own, or have any help getting them in terms of resources and things like that? Did somebody give them money to do it? They're going to be looking at all of that to try to determine how those guns came into this person's possession, and just the, you know, the shocking nature of this. Those children in the church that being attacked from the outside, where they're utterly defenseless. An act of, as officials described, of cruelty and cowardice. That this person was clearly indiscriminately shooting dozens and dozens of rounds from 3 separate weapons, and it's a jarringly cruel act to have committed this horrific act of violence.
And I want to bring in former FBI agent Brad Garrett, an ABC News contributor. Brad, so often in these cases, we hear later about all these red flags. We don't know that that will happen here, but can we do better in terms of identifying potential suspects, people in need, and so on, before something like this happens?
Well, certainly, excuse me, we can do better. I think the real problem here, Diane, is clearly identifying troubled people. There are plenty of troubled people who aren't violent. But the point being, do we really have a mechanism to first identify people who today are talking in very dark, violent ways, that then acquire weapons, and then start making comments about harming people? There's really no mechanism for that to get to law enforcement unless a family, a friend, an associate, somebody online comes to law enforcement or to the mental health community. And so it's really, in today's environment and the ability to communicate in so many different venues, how do you pull that together? And I'm not convinced that we can really pull it together, but can we, in individual communities, at least develop some mechanism to keep track of people that we hear about? And that doesn't mean you're trying to lock them up, but who are they? And the idea of teams of law enforcement and mental health professionals, maybe having a list of people that they check on, because they have picked up information today that it's not that they're about to go shoot somebody, but they're really talking in really dark, violent ways. And this gets really touchy, as I mentioned earlier, because, it's the privacy of people, the privacy of people to purchase firearms, etc. But there has to be some meeting of the minds here to better identify people that we can maybe, hopefully, help instead of lock up. And that's not always the case. But the law enforcement's not really set up to do it. The mental health community's not really set up to do it. You almost need specialized units. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to monitor it? This becomes really thorny. And then the whole emotional issue of firearms and restricting firearms from people. I'm just not sure we're going to make any headway there. But we certainly, to your question to me, can we do a better job?
I want to know
of
why
figuring out
did
people
this guy
that
do
potentially
this?
headed this direction? And the answer is yes.
And we're hearing now from a bishop from the local diocese who was at the hospital where some of those children are being treated. I want to play some of what he told our affiliate KSTP.
It was the opening school mass, is my understanding, and every Catholic school has an open school mass, so it's a horrible, horrific way for all the students to begin the school year, where safety procedures were put in place. People come excited to go back to school, very excited about an academic year, feeling safe in South Minneapolis, and now look what happened. It's very unfortunate. I talked to a few whose children are in surgery or being cared for, just panicking. Of course, they're in shock and worried, and asking why. It's just unbelievable that this could happen still today. Very sad for the community, for the family, and very sad for the families who've lost loved ones.
And again, we are following this breaking news. Police now confirm 2 children, ages 8 and 10, have been killed in a deadly mass shooting at a Catholic church in Minneapolis. Officials say 17 other people, including 14 kids, are injured after the gunman opened fire during a mass at Annunciation Church celebrating the first week of school at the local school. The police chief says just before 8:30, the shooter in his early 20s opened fire from outside the church through the stained glass windows at the pews full of children. And officials say the shooter is also believed to be dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and that there's no active threat to the community. Now investigators are going through searching the scene and also searching what they believe to be the shooter's car at the scene. We will have continuing coverage of this breaking story all day long. And for now, we're going to go to our ABC affiliate in Minneapolis, KSTP.
To the operating room. They work with gunshot wounds all the time, so they know what to do, and that's where the trauma kids went that needed immediate help. 6 other kids are at Children's Hospital, and we understand 2 of those are in critical condition, 7 in critical over at HCMC as well.
We do want to go back out now to our Ellen Gallus. She is live on the scene. She's right there in the area of 54th and Lindale, right outside of Annunciation Catholic School and Church, where this shooting happened this morning. Ellen?
Yeah, that's right. We're actually on the southwest corner of the school. You can probably see it here behind me over my shoulder. You can see that the area is still taped off, and the school and the church are actually connected. Just to give you a sense of the layout here, the rest of the neighborhood at this point is pretty quiet, pretty somber. You probably heard Mayor Fry say earlier that that shouldn't be the case, that these are kids who should be learning in a classroom right now or playing on the playground, and that's not the case. And he said everyone here today, their lives will be forever changed by what happened this morning. We do know that 2 kids, as you mentioned, ages 8 and 10 were killed, 2 more in critical. Police told us they are still working to learn more about the gunman, that they don't know much about him right now, but that he shot through the windows while people were inside at the back to school mass. They say he opened fire on worshipers and kids inside. They also told us that they are searching his car right now, but that he doesn't have an extensive criminal history, so they're working to learn more about him. They also told us they're not sure he even entered the church this morning, that all of this might have been done from the parking lot through the windows, and that is where ultimately he took his own life. They said that he used a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. So again, a very scary, confusing morning out here in the neighborhood. We have seen the range of emotions. We've seen so many parents reunited with their kids, heartbroken but also grateful. You've heard me say throughout the morning that I spoke with one mother who rushed over here to try and find her daughter and was just hoping and praying that her daughter would be with the group of kids who are waiting to be reunited with their families. We also talked to a 5th grader who heard the gunshots ring out while she was in church and was shuttled down to a preschool classroom. She said she spent the morning praying while she waited to get picked up by her parents. She said she believes that God was watching over her and that her guardian angel was watching over her, and that she's just so grateful to be safe. I can tell you as a parent, this time of year, the start of the school year, is supposed to be one full of hope and new beginnings, and something much different played out here today, and you can really feel it in the neighborhood. Guys?
It is just such a sad situation when you see it and you hear it, and then you see the parents that are reunited with their children, and you can tell they are so grateful. But then we still have the 2 families who are so heavily impacted by the death of an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old in all of this.
And the shooting at Annunciation Catholic School and Church just around 8:30 this morning. A lot of the Catholic schools started this week, started on Monday. Many other schools in Minnesota, of course, will start after Labor Day on Tuesday. So a lot of parents and children probably watching here at 11:42 this morning as we are covering the shooting at the school and church in Minneapolis. The Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry came out and addressed the community. He talked about the tragedy, how these are members of our community. The Minneapolis police chief came out and gave us some details. We heard from him a little bit earlier, and actually I think we have the mayor here. Let's hear more of what Mayor Jacob Fry said just about an hour ago.
These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Mayor Jacob Price speaking on this, and you can tell he is upset like all of us. He is angry, he is saddened, all of those emotions.
As he
coming
should
out.
be.
In fact,
He
there
should be
was
mad
a
as
picture I
damn
saw
hell.
of just a video that we were monitoring, and the mayor was sitting out in front of the school on the steps by himself.
Sitting down with his head in his hands.
Yeah, and just because this is one of those things that we don't have an answer why in this at all, and that's what investigators are trying to figure out. Again, this suspect in his 20s, no known criminal history. They're going through his car, which is there at the scene. We know that he took his life, what we believe, the backside is just outside the church, right in that area.
The shooter showed up wearing black clothing with 3 weapons, with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, and fired from outside of the church through the windows inside where the students, preschool to 8th grade students, were gathered for a mass as they got the school year started. We understand, again, as we mentioned, that 2 children were killed, an 8 and 10-year-old child lost their life in this today. The shooter is also dead, and multiple children were taken to hospitals around town. Our Maria Bray is at Hennepin County Medical Center, and we heard from the emergency director at Hennepin County Medical Center earlier, talking about how they are ready and prepared to treat. It is a level 1 trauma center, and they actually deal with gunshot victims on a somewhat regular basis. And if we have Maria available, I want to hear the latest from her about the families who are showing up and checking on their children, and how the medical staff stepped in to handle this trauma today. Maria.
Yeah, we talked to emergency doctor, chair over the emergency area here at HCMC, and he says that this takes a toll. This is the second mass casualty incident that has happened for the second day in a row here that they've been helping out people. He tells us around 8:45 this morning that when they were informed about that school shooting, 11 patients were brought here. 2 were adults, 9 were children ages 6 to 14 years old. 4 of those individuals needed operation. 2 of those patients and none of them died. That is what we were told. Now, 7 were brought in as with critical conditions. And as I mentioned, he says that this takes a toll for the medical staff. It takes a whole team in order to help these patients from blood banks. And he also says that there were some people, some of those victims that were non-critical that were taken to Children's Hospital and Masonic Hospital. We've seen some parents coming in, running, sprinting through the front doors, trying to check up on their children. A mom tells me her son was shot. She was crying. We saw the dad and his son. The son looks like he had his uniform on, running inside. We've seen other parents who are obviously visibly upset, trying to figure out what's going on. And we also talked to a bishop who says that he grew up going to Annunciation. And this is what he tells us.
Very sad, many in shock, disbelief in what has happened, especially during Mass. My understanding, it happened during a Mass. And one of the parents said they put in all kinds of security over the summer for the church, and look what happened.
And again, here at HCMC, we're told that 11 patients were brought here. 2 were adults and 9 were kids ages 6 to 14. As of now, we have no word on if any of those victims were discharged, but we were told that all of them did have gunshot wounds. Back to you.
Maria Bray outside of Hennepin County Medical Center in Minneapolis, where a number of children were brought after being shot at Annunciation School. And it was interesting. She spoke with a bishop who talked about security measures being added. As I mentioned, I sent my children to Catholic school. Just a couple of years ago, there was a big push to add more security. School security, of course, as you all know, has been a major topic over the last dozen years. Many schools have added a lot of measures. Catholic schools who operate independently from public school districts handle these things a little bit differently, and there's been a discussion around making sure that there is more safety measures in place, especially when all of the children gather and they do Mass. Most of these schools once a week. Some go every single day where they pull the whole student body together to celebrate a Mass. And we just heard from the bishop saying that they've made an effort to make it more secure for the kids, but we heard from the Minneapolis police chief that the suspect fired through the windows. The suspect did not go inside as far as they know, but instead, with 3 weapons, fired shots standing outside of the church into the church where all the kids were gathered.
It is just such a tragic and sad situation. We are now more than 3 hours into this. This, of course, started around 8:30. It was right after school got started. And again, as you just mentioned, Leah, they were going into Mass. And Bailey Hurley was first on the scene over there from our team coverage. And she joins us now. And Bailey, I know you have watched this entire thing unfold and listened through all of it. And the big thing that I have watched you all morning is you have been talking about the parents who have just rushed in to find their children today.
Yeah, when we first got here on scene, Paul and Leah, there was still a lot that was unknown. Nothing had been confirmed by officials yet, and so not only were police frantic here on the scene, we watched officer after officer after officer and Bearcat and SWAT team member rush here to the scene, both in car and up this hill on foot. But then we started watching as parents showed up. I've never seen such frantic parking jobs, leaving their cars on sidewalks and running up this hill, tears in their eyes, hope in their hearts that they were going to go find their children and be reunited with them. It's honestly some images that I will truly never forget in my life. It was hard to watch, but then there was peace when you saw about an hour later so many of those families coming down the hill, holding their children almost in a death grip as they walk back down the hill to their homes and to their cars, reunited with their children. And I can only imagine that those children will not be going very far out of their parents' sights for the rest of the day, if not for a very long time. Of course, there are 2 families who will never get that opportunity again.
We will be here till 1 o'clock. After 1 o'clock, I'll be done.
and their support around those families. And I know that that's a big question that I continue to get in my inbox right now is how can we help these hurting families? We do know from the city that a resource center is in the process of being set up as we speak, not only just for the victims' families, but for everyone who attends the school, who attends the church. This is far-reaching, we know, the pain and the loss that is being felt here today. I do want to mention, I did just speak with a neighbor. She didn't want to go on camera. She's still very shaken up. She says her home literally looks out at the drop-off line of Annunciation School. She was very shaken up. It was the first time she's left her home all morning, but she said the morning started off like any normal day. All the parents dropping their kids off for school, for mass. It was very quiet. And she says then about 8:30 is when her and her neighbors, she says she was in her living room and she started hearing what sounded like construction noise. It was so loud and the cadence was just, she said it was almost like a hammer, the loudest hammer she's ever heard at such a continuing cadence, excuse me. She said she tried to call 911, her phone was dead. Her neighbors tried to call 911 and they couldn't get through. Finally, she says one neighbor did get through and then heard or learned from dispatch that there was a mass casualty event going on. She says she's been shaken up ever since. Nothing like this happens in this neighborhood, in this part of the city. She was visibly shaken up. Her kids don't go there, but she says she just, the more people you talk to, the less people have words to say how they're feeling, to describe what this day is like. Everyone, though, committed to remembering these two children, the 8 and the 10-year-old, who were lost in this. That woman that I just spoke with, she said that will be paramount going here on out, remembering those children and, of course, the others who were hurt in this as well. Leah Paul.
Forget those 2 children that died in this, and of course Bailey describing the sounds that people heard, and we have now confirmed that was a pistol and a rifle and a shotgun. This suspect firing all 3 of these things. Bailey mentioned that people want to do something. There is something that you can do tonight. It's at 8 o'clock. It's going to be at Lyndhurst Park. It is a vigil that you can go to express yourself, honor the people, honor the lives that were lost, and the people that have been hurt in all of this.
As we mentioned, Minneapolis police, surrounding police departments, BCA, federal agents, all jumped on this and jumped in to help the students and investigate. The investigation, of course, is just ramping up into the suspect who took his own life at the scene. We want to bring in ABC News correspondent Pierre Thomas now. And Pierre, you're getting some information for us about the FBI response, what they're doing right now and what they're working to learn.
Well, the FBI director, Casper Tell, is signaling that the FBI will provide whatever support that Minneapolis needs to deal with this horrific nightmare that played out on your city streets. Just a horrible situation. The FBI typically can give a lot of support in terms of crime scene management, in terms of cataloging all the different types of shell casings, analyzing the guns as well. ATF will do a search, a background search on the weapons to see how they were purchased, when the suspect came into access of those weapons. So there's a lot that the federal government can do in support, but right now they're just stunned and saddened like the rest of the country with the horrific attack that played out at Mass at that church with so many young people impacted.
Let me ask you, I mean, you've worked with the FBI in these cases before. In my memory, this is the first time I can recall someone not even going in to the building on this. I mean, shooting from outside.
Well, unfortunately, this suspect had 3 different types of weapons: a long gun, a shotgun, and a handgun. And as you said, police briefed that he used all 3. And apparently he was hell-bent on harming as many people as quickly as he could. He didn't apparently care how they would be injured. He just wanted to fire into the building knowing that there were children and people inside. It was described by the police as an act of evil and violence. And sadly, we see this happening routinely in this country. Houses of worship, schools, movie theaters, malls. There's a chronic problem of shootings taking place at soft targets where there are large numbers of people gathered, because unfortunately the killers know that's where they can do the most damage.
Pierre Thomas is joining us here from ABC News in Washington, D.C. And Pierre, I understand you've covered many of these cases. You have spoken to the FBI on multiple occasions. Are you learning anything else about this shooter yet that you can share with us? A young man in his 20s. I know we have our news team working on digging up more information right now. We're gathering a few things and we're hoping to flush all that out. Is there anything else you can share with us about it?
Well, our information that we have matches your Cracker Jack team there, reporting from Minneapolis. The police have a name that they are focused on. They are going to conduct searches that are in any type of information that could be used to possibly get at motive. But there is a specific person that law enforcement is locked in on, and I can tell you, having covered many of these cases, they literally will do a deep dive into any type of social media postings. They basically will dissect this person's life, particularly the most recent series of days and months.
Okay, Pierre Thomas in Washington, D.C. right now, working with the FBI. So much information that you can find there as the day goes on. And of course, Pierre, thank you.
I want to try to come back with an update on the shooting later. I'm not sure when later, but I'll try to come back later with information on the shooting. And with that being said, I'll see y'all later. Peace.